in Rome, Paul was writing to Timothy, his beloved son in the faith, whom he was leading, mentoring, and discipling. Paul left Timothy with the difficult task of confronting false teachers, strengthening the church, and establishing godly leadership. So on week 1, Craig got us 2 verses in with Paul's emphasis on the pure gospel and leadership anchored in integrity and how true leadership flows from a life centered on Christ, which is an ongoing theme throughout this series. Week 2, we did verses 3 through 11, showing us that faithful leadership comes from a pure heart, a good conscience, and a sincere faith. Week 3, verses 5 through 16, we were reminded that we all fall short of God's standards and the right to stand before God is not earned but received. Week 4, verses 12 through 20, Paul gives us the reminder that even discipline, our goal in leadership, should be restoration, pointing towards God's ultimate authority and mercy. Then week 5, chapter 2, verses 1 through 7, with a reminder on loving our enemies no matter how radical that may seem, and how through prayer, leaders align themselves with God's will. And then week 6, chapter 2, verses 8 through 15, we got clarity on the roles women and men have within the church and family with a focus on responsibility, not privilege. Week 7, chapter 3, verses 1 through 13, we saw that leadership begins with character, not competency, and how the church depends on leaders who model discipleship first in their homes and then the congregation. Week 8, 3:14 through 4:10, Will pointed out that true training for godliness is fueled not by guilt or obligation, but by the confident hope that our Savior is alive and at work in those who believe, with a challenge to exercise our faith to not grow spiritually fat. Make sure to check it out on the podcast if you missed it. Reminder, discussion guides are on the website. If you want to do a deep dive, you want to get some key takeaways, you want to do a devotional, go check those out. All right, that means we are on week 9 of 1 Timothy. We got none other than our good friend Daniel, who will be preaching this morning. Will last week encouraged us to take notes in the message with the reminder that we shouldn't treat church like an obligation, but if we really want to get something out of that, that might look different for everybody, but try to put some intentionality into retaining some of the information, some of the scriptural observations from the pastors that are preaching week to week. Just an encouragement. All right, Daniel, if you're ready, I'm ready. Go for it.
How's it going? I'm really excited to be here today. I don't know if you guys showed it. I'm 5'7", so I had some pretty cool theme music. I feel pretty great about that. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate the hype already. Now, I really am excited to be going through this sermon series with everybody. The idea of the sole priority for our lives and taking these small steps through 1 Timothy is really it's a phenomenal series, and I've been having a great time. And if you're a first-time guest, and it's the first time you're hearing any of it, I'm super glad you made it out. I'm so appreciative that hopefully you'll take something away from this. And if you're a second-time guest, as you've heard, your family, and I'm glad to see you again. I hope I get to know you and get to hear your story. And if you've been here with us for a couple weeks and you've been working through Soul Priority with us, you've already, as we covered in the video, Pastor Craig did a really good job of establishing very quickly that the foundation of leadership is character. The foundation of leadership is character. When it all comes back to it, yes, leadership is influence, but it all starts with character. That's the first building block we need to have. And so he's established that, and we've been able to trace this thread through the letter as we analyze it and we look through it, and it keeps to be repeating itself over and over and over again. And we're going to see that same thing today. And last week, Pastor Will did a phenomenal job, didn't he? Let's give him a round of applause for that. He did good. Yeah. And he talked about how we have to put some intentionality behind the spiritual growth we have in our lives. If we do not train to have more faith, we won't gain more faith. It takes effort. It takes intentionality. And I'm going to be very honest with you real quick, because I think vulnerability and authenticity between the speaker and the audience is really important. And Pastor Will did such a good job that as I was listening to the service, I was like, I don't know if I want to get up after that. That was really good. That was really, really good. I was like, maybe I'll call out. That wouldn't seem odd at the last second. And so I started to feel this doubt. I was like, man, that was really good. It makes sense. He's got a couple more degrees than I do, and he's very smart, and he's very mature. So I started to feel this doubt seep in about, maybe I shouldn't get up and preach after that. And that's not the first time I felt that doubt. Growing up, I felt that doubt transitioning from middle school to high school, or from homeschool to public school, getting out of the high school, going into the military. This doubt, as I saw some challenge on the horizon, I would feel this doubt about maybe I can't conquer this challenge. Maybe I can't overcome this difficulty. And I remember growing up, there was this specific time, I have this very distinct memory of me being a typical teenage guy, and I was trying to impress this girl, and in the middle of me trying to do some kung fu stuff, I hurt my neck, right? Which wasn't impressive. I wasn't really good at it. I just tried to impress them, and then it usually ended up in me getting hurt, which usually ended up in me going to the hospital. So because this was a trend in my life, and I tried really hard to impress this gal, I got hurt my neck, went to the hospital. It wasn't like super extreme. It was like a pulled muscle, and they were like, "You're okay. Maybe just don't do that again." So I was like, "Okay." And I was consistent enough in the hospital that I knew the nurses on certain shifts. They were like, "Oh, you're back again." And I was like, "Yeah." And there was this father figure I looked up to in my life, and he was actually my pastor at the time. And he brought me into his office and he sat me down. He was like, "Son, you need to chill out. Like, you gotta calm down. You're gonna make your mom go crazy. You're being too wild. All this stuff you're doing, your mom's going through enough. You need to stop." And I know he had good intentions, but in that moment I felt like he was trying to put me in this box. And my mom was very good about encouraging me to go push my limits, go find adventure, go do something, get out of the house, go do something challenging. And so in my pursuit of that, sometimes I took it too far and I got hurt. But this pastor who I really appreciated and loved was now telling me to get back in this box, go play inside, is what it felt like I was hearing. And that really impacted me. And in the middle of me trying to process this challenge and process this idea, someone recommended this book to me called Wild at Heart. And it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. But the author, John Eldredge, he gives us this question that haunts many men as they're growing up. From boyhood to manhood, there's this question of, do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes? And I felt like this author was writing to me, because as I'm reading this as a teenage guy, and I'm trying to understand this transition, and I had a string of not great father figures in my life who just really let me down. And I had these doubts about my ability to be able to step up and do things. So I felt this question, and I felt this doubt seep in so consistently throughout my life of, do I have what it takes? And I felt it last Sunday, and I felt it in that moment when I hurt my neck, and I felt it when I was getting ready to join the military. Do I have what it takes to conquer this? And I felt it, like it wraps around your heart, this doubt, this anxiety, this wonder if I'm going to be able to do this, if I can accomplish this thing that I seem to have in front of me, because I can't change the circumstances. All I can do is try to conquer the challenge. Do I have what it takes? And I think we all experience this doubt at times. We all experience this wrapping around of our heart, this anxiety. We can all feel it whenever maybe you're a young person in the audience and you're getting ready to go to high school, or you're in high school now, or maybe you're getting ready to leave high school and go into the military or the workforce or college. And you feel this doubt about if you can accomplish this, if you can actually overcome this challenge that's facing you. Maybe you're already old enough and you've been in the workforce, or you've been through college, but maybe you're getting a promotion. Maybe you're stepping into a new role with the new expectations, new responsibilities, and you don't know exactly how to do it, and so you see this challenge. And we ask ourselves, do we have what it takes? Maybe you're like me and you have kids on the way. Or maybe you have a newborn baby, and I'm sure many of us understand that, and if you've had kids, you know that fear of, I'm about to be responsible for another human life. And it's daunting. Do we have what it takes to be able to do this? We feel this doubt, and we know we've got to just keep pushing forward and try and learn as we go, but we have this doubt. Do we have what it takes? And this doubt can get around our hearts, and it can hold us back. And what's happening is there's this perceived or this real gap in competency sometimes. And what I mean by that is competency is having the skills to accomplish the mission and purpose for which Christ called us, and accomplishing them. Having the skills to accomplish the mission and purpose for which Christ called us. That's competency. The ability to step into something, having the experience, the education, the know-how, to be able to say, I can do this because I know how to do this. The problem is when we don't know how to do it, and now we're trying to bridge this gap. We've got this challenge where we have to learn really quickly. There's a steep learning curve. And so as we trace this thread through 1 Timothy, we're talking about character as the foundation of leadership. And character is the degree to which someone lives their life similar to Christ, which would be good character, or different from Christ, which would be bad character. So as we think about character, we think about competency, and we look through this passage in 1 Timothy, and we see this character consistently popping up. And we have this experience in our own lives where we feel there might be a gap, and there's this I don't quite know what to do in this situation. This is what I want you to look at as we analyze this passage, as we dig in and try and peel back a couple layers. And this is it. The foundation of character, the foundation of good character, will fill the competency gap you feel until your competency catches up. It will fill the competency gap until your competency catches up. What I mean by that is whenever you're experiencing this challenge, good character is what's going to get you through. And in the process of it doing that, it's going to impact others. And so that's what I want to look at. As we look through 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 11 through chapter 5, verse 2, I want you to keep this in mind because this is the theme we're going to see over and over again. So let's read it. It says, "Command and teach these things. Don't let anyone despise your youth, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. Until I come, give your attention to public reading, exhortation, and teaching. Don't neglect the gift that is in you. It was given to you through prophecy with the laying on of hands by the council of elders. Practice these things. Be committed to them so that your progress may be evident to all. Pay close attention to your life and your teaching. Persevere in these things, for in doing this you will save both yourself and your hearers." In chapter 5 it says, "Don't rebuke an older man, but exhort him as a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters with all purity." So we're going to take a couple looks through this passage real quick, and there's a couple things I want you to notice as we start to work through the passage. The first thing I want you to notice in the first 3 verses, we have this idea of Paul re-emphasizing to Timothy, this young leader at the church, of a foundation of character impacts others. Right? So in verse 11, it says, "Command and teach these things." Command and teach these things. Now, this isn't just a passive statement. No, Timothy's being called up to lead. It says, "Command and teach these things." Authoritatively, Timothy, step up and lead your people. They need you. But don't just hold it over them where you're trying to tell them what to do. No, make sure they understand the good doctrine. In the middle of all this, the false doctrine that's being taught, make sure you're getting on their level. You're going house to house. You're taking the time and you're explaining, you're teaching them the true doctrine. If they have questions, answer them, Timothy. You know what the true doctrine is. But you also have to call them up. He says to command and teach these things. Timothy's being told to call up. And in verse 12, it says, "Don't let anyone despise your youth, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." Right, so what's happening here, and this is our core value of we play the bench, the idea that we want to empower emerging leaders to take a step up and to go do great things for the kingdom of God, right? And I remember growing up, I would hear this verse over and over again in youth group, and there was always this weight on Timothy being young. That was kind of the emphasis every time. Timothy was a younger guy, and just like you're in the youth group, don't let anyone despise that. And I think that's true, and I think that's important, but as I read through this passage over and over again, what stuck out to me wasn't that Timothy was young or old, or what stuck out was Paul tells him to set an example for the believers. Don't let anyone despise your youth, Timothy, but set an example. Whenever you're experiencing some sort of gap or perceived gap where someone's looking down on you, rely on character. And he gives them these 5 areas to do it, and it's not exhaustive, but he gives them these 5 areas to try and understand the way he can analyze his character. We have his speech, he has it in conduct. So what you're saying, Timothy, what you're doing, it matters. These external things you do, they matter. Then he says the other things are in love, in faith, and in purity. Right? And so these are internal things, Timothy, but you focusing on your character and making sure you're living a life similar to Christ is going to matter. And these internal things, your faith, your love, your purity, are going to have external manifestations, and they matter because people are going to see it. Because people are going to see the false teachers, and they're going to see how Timothy should be living his life. And if he's living a life of good character, that separates him. We see him by his fruit, how he's behaving. So the idea of your character is really important, and it's a foundation you build on that's going to impact others. And in this next verse, in verse 13, it says, "Until I come, give your attention to public reading, exhortation, and teaching," which is interesting, right? Because Timothy's not being told to go sit in a corner somewhere, read his Bible, and pray every day and never interact with his audience. No, he's being told to step up and lead, Timothy, command and teach, set an example, rely on a foundation of character, and then he's being told, Make sure you're reading the Bible to people. Make sure they're hearing the Word of God. Make sure they hear the Scriptures. Encourage them, Timothy. Make sure they are being lifted up. Make sure you're calling them up to go do great things for the kingdom of God. But again, we go back to teaching. Make sure they understand on the simplest level, this is what the gospel is. This is what the doctrine is. This is what false doctrine is. This is what true doctrine is. And so this whole idea, we see that a foundation of good character impacts others. That's the first thing I want you to notice in those first 3 verses. Now in verse 14, it's a little different. It takes a slightly different approach. It says, don't neglect the gift that is in you. It was given to you through prophecy with the laying on of hands by the council of elders. Now what I want you to notice in this is that Paul takes a slightly different approach, and he tells Timothy, reminds him of a time when men of good character impacted Timothy. So that first point that I want you to notice was a foundation of good character impacts others. Now Paul seems to be telling Timothy about a time when men of good character impacted Timothy. Right? They said, don't neglect the gift that is in you. What you have, Timothy, this gift you have that God has given you, don't let it sit on the shelf. No, make sure you use it. Use it to care for and lead your people. We know it's true, we know it's real because you were called up through prophecy, and this group of men, of elders of the church who should be of high character and who should care and who should teach and who should love you, they surrounded you and they called you up and they sent you out. Men of good character impacted you, Timothy. That's that second point. When I was in Okinawa on a deployment at one point, I wasn't really pursuing Christianity as much as I should have. And I wasn't like super falling away from the faith. I was still reading my Bible consistently, but I wasn't really going to church because I was busy and I get tired and, we all make these excuses. And I remember getting over to Okinawa and I went into the Marine Corps Exchange on the base and I got in line to check out with my stuff. It was like junk food or something. And the guy who was ringing me up, he looked so familiar. I was like, I don't know how I'm standing in Japan and I recognize this guy, but he looks really familiar. And it dawned on me, this young man's name was, wow, now I'm forgetting his name. His dad was a missionary who had come through our church in Florida 2 or 3 years before and had gotten support from our church and then had gone to Okinawa to minister and be a missionary to the military there. And this young man sitting there checking out in the aisle, and he's ringing my stuff up, and I'm like, isn't your last name like Jellison? I think that was the last name. And he was like, yeah. And so then he told me to message him on Messenger, and I did, and then he would come pick us up on Sundays, and he would take us to church, and I was like, okay, maybe this is obviously a sign. What are the chances of this happening? So I started going to church, and in the car, there was this gentleman who was sitting in front of us who was also picked up by this missionary's son, and he was older than us, which was weird because in a military installation, that usually means they're outranking you in some way, right? And we get to the church and we're sitting there, we're listening to the preacher, and I see on his bag, it says his captain rank tab. And so me being a little Lance Corporal, way on the other end of the spectrum, it was like, okay. He was trying to play it cool, but I don't know why he forgot to take that off. But what happened over the next few months was he would see me around the battalion area, and he'd be like, hey, Daniel, you going to church this Sunday? Hey, Daniel, you going to church? Hey, Daniel, I didn't see you at church last week. I was like, oh, man. Okay. Being called out all of a sudden. And then we got back to Jacksonville, North Carolina. He'd see me around the battalion area. Hey, Daniel, you go to church? Hey, why don't you come to my church? Let's just go to this one. Over and over again, he would call me up. And this man made a huge impact in my life because when I knew I was being held accountable by someone who loved me and cared for me and wanted what was best for me, and he was saying, hey, Daniel, I didn't see you at church this Sunday, that mattered. And I started going to church. I started getting back in the Word. I started trying to get back on fire for God and trying to pursue His will in my life, and that mattered because just like Timothy, people of good character have impacted you. People of good character have impacted me. Now in verses 15 and 16, this is the point I want you to try and understand a little bit, right? The third thing I want you to notice is commit to character, practice character, impact others. So verses 15 and 16 are interesting because they're almost formulaic when you look at them. There's 2 imperatives, 2, hey, do this, this is the result. Do this, this is the result. So it's very formulaic. So it says practice these things. Where are we at? Practice these things, be committed to them, so that your progress may be evident to all. Hey, Timothy, what I'm telling you, you need to do this. When I'm telling you to build up a foundation of character, do this. But don't just do it, extend it. It takes time. You have to commit to it. Be committed to them because it impacts the people around you, Timothy. The people you're leading, they're going to see this, and it's going to matter to them. And then in the next verse, it's different, but it's really the same. It says, pay close attention to your life and your teaching. Persevere in these things, for in doing this you will save both yourself and your hearers. Hey, Timothy, pay attention. Persevere, because it's going to impact other people in your life. Practice these things. It's going to impact people. And so I hope we can see that formulaic process where it's like Paul is reiterating the same thing, and he's really trying to get it across to Timothy. And it all goes back to character. What is he practicing? He's practicing character. What is he trying to be committed to? It's good character. It's making sure he's leading the people the way he's supposed to. And so in verses 1 and 2 of chapter 5, we see a slightly different break. And so we actually have a passage talking about family. So it says, don't rebuke an older man, but exhort him as a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and the younger women as sisters with all purity. Which is really interesting, right? Because the CSB puts these together as instructions for ministry. And so I heard one commentator say that this passage between 4:11 to 5:2 is kind of like Timothy's standing orders. As everything else has been really specific about what to do in these very specific situations, this is kind of more general. Like, Timothy, this is how you should be operating. And this is interesting because he says the people you're leading, treat them like family. And the fourth point I want you to try and notice is the idea behind it is love the people you lead and walk through issues with love. Love the people you lead and walk through issues with love. You see, what happens in a family dynamic, especially when you have siblings, is you're growing up and you fight. I had many siblings, a whole bunch of them, and we fought. And what's interesting is you have to go through this process of you fight with them, you argue, you call them a mean name, they call you a mean name, you move on with your life. But what happens is then we have to sit at the dinner table in 10 minutes next to each other. And it's really uncomfortable. In our house, I shared a room with my brothers. So we would argue and we would yell and we would throw stuff and then we'd get over it and then we'd go to sleep at night and I'd have to listen to him snore for 12 hours. Right? So there's this dynamic. This is the first time where humans and people growing up have to try and learn how to navigate conflict without just saying, I'm never talking to you again. And some families do this really well and some families don't do this really well. But you can see that playing out today where people know how to do this well and they can love you through these moments, and people who don't know how to do this well, and when you disagree with them on anything, they just cut you out of their life. This cancel culture we see, right? And so Timothy's being instructed by Paul to love the people you lead like you would your family. Navigate these conflicts with love, right? Love is fighting for the highest possible good of others. Fighting for the highest possible good. And if you're going into a conversation like that, Timothy, and you're saying, this is my family, everyone in this church right here, we should be treating each other like a family, and you should know that I care about you and you care about me. So when we come and we have a conversation and it's difficult and it's uncomfortable, know that I'm fighting for your highest possible good, and I really want to see you flourish and grow, and I want to see the church grow in this way. And so that's how Timothy's being told to care for these people in this moment. Love the people you lead. Fight for their highest possible good. And when you have these issues with false doctrine, when you have these issues where they may look down on you because you're younger or you don't seem competent enough, walk through it with love. Don't take it personally. Don't rebuke them. Don't make it a big deal where you're coming after them. It's not personal, right? Walk through these issues with love. And so these are these four things I want us to see and I want us to notice. Is the first one is a foundation of good character impacts others. The second one in this passage is men of good character impacted you. The third one is commit to character, practice character, impact others. And this fourth one is love the people you lead and walk through issues with love. Love the people you lead and walk through issues with love. And as I read through this over and over and over again, I tried to understand the overall concept, this thread of how character is going to fill the gap. Whenever you feel like you can't do something, whenever you don't feel competent enough, whenever you feel like people are looking down on you, real or perceived, this competency gap, character, the foundation of character is what's going to bridge that gap. Because if you have character, if you've godly character, you love the people, right? You're going to take these extra steps to teach them. And we're going to do that for each other. Timothy's going to take the time to teach them, encourage them, call them up. And so I wanted to create a simple visual for us today. And I hope that it allows us to understand this concept. So whenever you read through this passage again, You can imagine this visual with me. The idea is pursue, practice, impact. Pursue, practice, impact. You see, we're told to pursue godly character. That's what Timothy's being instructed to do, to pursue godly character. It's like planting a seed. You make a distinct decision at some moment to say, I'm going to do this. It's not an accidental thing. It's intentional. There's a specific moment in time where you say, no, I'm going to pursue godly character. Timothy's being told by Paul, pursue godly character. When people are looking down on you, when you're having difficulties, when there's false doctrine, Timothy, you need to pursue godly character. Build this foundation in your character, because people will give you a lot of grace knowing that you're a good person. We can all imagine those bosses we've worked for who were just not good people. I can think of a couple in my life who were, especially in the military, where bad character was kind of this weird thing where it was like, you're kind of bad, you're not really bad. And these people I was supposed to be leading, that were supposed to be training us and preparing us, were at the same time going off and cheating on their wife every deployment. At the same time, we're cussing everybody out and never trying to actually lead people. They were just yelling at them. And then we can all imagine those bad leaders we've had in our lives, and it may not be that extreme, but where they just didn't really care for you. They left you hanging, or they didn't explain what they needed, and you were left in this situation trying to understand how to follow them because they'd never made that decision to pursue godly character. But as a seed takes time to grow, as it becomes a tree, it requires time, it requires intentionality, it requires energy, it requires nourishment. And so if we want to see that seed grow into a tree, we have to practice godly character. We have to reinforce godly character into our lives. Yes, you make the decision, but when you make a decision and when it's really convenient, it falls away very quickly. We have to practice it. We have to practice it. We have to practice it. How do we do that? We read the Bible. If godly character is living a life like Christ, then this is where it literally, his words are here. His stories are here. His ideas, the things he said, the things he did, the way he loved people was given as an example right here for us. It means praying. It means communicating. It means praying for people. It means praying with people. It means being in community, practicing godly character around people who love you and care for you and who want to call you up to do something greater. That's what it means to practice godly character. And here's the why, because of the impact. Character, good or bad in your life, is going to impact people around you. There's this idea called radiance. And it's this idea that if I have a bad day at work and I go home and me and Jenna have a fight because I'm in a bad mood, Jenna's going to then go to work and her coworkers are going to experience my frustration. That's how connected humans are. And this is what's going to happen if I don't decide to pursue godly character, if I don't decide to make a decision to practice godly character, to reinforce it into my life. The people that are going to feel it first is Jenna and Lucy. The people that are going to experience it first, the people that are going to suffer the most because of my failure to lead myself and to lead my family is my family. What you do impacts your decision to have good character or bad character. It impacts the people around you. And you might not have kids, but you have family. You have people you live with. You have people you go to school with, people you go to work with. Your decision to have good character is going to impact them. You never know how you're influencing someone you walk past. You never know how you're influencing the people you come across. It matters every single day. And deciding to say, no, I'm going to pursue godly character. I'm going to practice it. I'm going to reinforce it into every aspect of my life is going to impact the people around you. And in the long run, it's going to matter. And I can't afford to think that Lucy's going to be missing out or she's going to be let down or failed because I failed to pursue God. The impact matters. There's this story I read growing up called The Hiding Place, and it's about Corrie ten Boom in the middle of the Holocaust and her decisions, and it's an incredible story of incredible character where people were stepping up and saying, evil is happening, I will not stand on the sidelines, I'm going to do something about it. And her and her family, they would hide Jews away in these false walls to try and make sure they could get out of the city alive, they could escape the Nazi. And I was like, that's an incredible story. And I remember we went to DC with the youth last year, and I remember getting to walk through the Holocaust Museum. And if you've ever been there, it's a very sobering experience. As you're walking down the halls, they get darker, and you're looking at these pictures of people who were suffering. You're looking at these pictures of people and these videos of people who were suffering, and not everyone made it out. You're looking in the face of evil, and to think that people stood up against that and said, no, we're not going to bend our will to this. No, we're going to do something that matters. And Corrie ten Boom and her family, they hid Jews away until they were eventually betrayed, and then they got sent off to a camp. And what's interesting about this story is, yes, this family already had a high amount of character. But what happened is, when they get to prison, when they get to the concentration camp, her faith is struggling. She's having a difficult time. And her sister Betsy says, I'm praying for these guards. The people who are holding you captive, she's praying for them. And she's thankful for the fleas inside of the building they're in. And what's interesting about this story is Corrie ten Boom and her family, their decision to have character. They didn't know how to be spies. They didn't know how to do espionage. They didn't know how to have an underground network to rescue people. But they decided to have good character. They said, no, we're going to stand up for what's right. And it impacted thousands of people. Thousands of people. And then you see Corrie's sister, her character impacted Corrie. Her sister said, there's no pit so deep that God's love can't be there. And her sister had such an impact on Corrie to be able to say, I'm going to pray for these people that are holding us captive. Imagine that amount of character. We have to practice character because it doesn't just come naturally. Whenever we're experiencing something, and I pray that we never go through something that's so severe, but in that moment, the chances of you becoming automatically a person with good character is very slow, very slim. The chances are you're going to revert to whatever you have in your life. The way you already operate, the way you already behave is you're going to revert back to. There was a thing I read once and it said, people who are disciplined aren't like superhumans. That's not the case. What happens is people who are disciplined structure their life to make discipline easier. And the author of Atomic Habits, he wrote, we don't rise to our goals, we fall to our systems. If you say, I want to read the Bible in a year, that's great. A system is, I'm going to read at least 12 minutes every day, and that'll get you through the Bible in a year. We don't rise to our goals, we fall to our systems. If we say, I want to live a life of godly character, I want to pursue godly character, well, we don't reinforce it into every aspect of our lives. We're not going to, when it counts, when our faith is on the line, when we're putting question and we have to lead people with godly character, what are we going to revert back to? If you have a problem with lust, if you have a struggle with that, don't let yourself walk into places where that's going to be tempting. Don't let yourself be caught on your electronic devices late at night. If you have a problem with alcohol, don't go to the bar. Don't even go through the liquor aisle. If you want to learn if you want to get in shape and you want to run, don't say, I want to run X amount of miles this year. No, wake up every morning and put on your running shoes. We're not going to rise to our goals, we're going to fall to our systems. Just like godly character is something to aim for, but just as Pastor Will talked about, if we don't train for it, if we don't take these intentional steps, it's not going to happen. We need to be looking at the Bible and reflecting ourselves against it and say, what's happening? Where am I falling short of what God is telling me to do? We say we've been to the book as a guidebook for life, not because it's a magical process, but because we really do believe that living your life according to God's word is going to matter here, and it's going to matter when you walk out the doors in 20 minutes or however long. We really believe that it matters. If the Bible was only good standing on this little table and only good sitting in this pew and useless when you walked out those doors, this would be a useless piece of paper, wouldn't it? But that's not the case. It matters. It impacts. Godly character, living a life of godly character, being a leader according to what the Bible calls us to do, is just a good leader. Pat Lencioni said, the problem with the phrase servant leadership is that it implies there's any other type of leadership. And he said there's not. You see, our impact matters. You see, leadership isn't some privilege. It's not some great thing that we get to put on and we get all the cool fancy stuff. When we look at the Bible, when we evaluate ourselves as leaders, as people pursuing God according to the Bible, the person that we look to was Jesus Christ, right? That's what it means to have godly character. And so the person we model all of our leadership basis off of is the same person who leads us, and said, I'm going to go die on a cross. I'm going to go pay the price they couldn't. I'm going to go through this horrific death for the people I love. And so whenever we think about leadership, it's not that we get the cooler car or we get to be the cool guy on stage. You know, leadership is the sacrifice. If you're in a leadership position, your impact matters. And the degree to which you influence people matters. The leaders are the first ones to make the sacrifice. When we couldn't save ourselves, God came down and said, you know what, I'm going to step in. I'm going to fill the gap. My perfection, my godly character is what's going to bridge the gap for us to be saved. So we're called to pursue godly character. We're called to practice godly character, reinforce it into every aspect of your life. Because it's going to impact others, because it's going to impact you, because it's going to impact your family, because it'll impact your coworkers, because it'll impact your community. And if we're called to love people, if we're called to lead people, if we're called to fight for the highest possible good of others, and we know that that is making sure they are introduced to Jesus Christ and that he changes their life, if that's what we're called to do in this, is to influence people towards Christ, then every single one of us who claim to be Christians are leaders. And every single one of us should be trying to pursue godly character. And I don't want you to think that I'm trying to point fingers here. As I was reading through this passage, I felt really convicted. Because I want to pursue godly character, but sometimes I just kind of let myself get lazy. I let myself get tired. And as I read through this passage over and over and over again, I realized how applicable this was to my life and how I need to practice godly character. And imagine if we as a church, we said, you know what, we're going to do this. We're going to pursue godly character. We're going to plant the seed, and we're going to hope that it becomes a tree, and we're going to be intentional. We're going to nourish it. We're going to build the systems around it. If the tree starts to fall, we're going to prop it up. If the tree needs more water, we're going to make sure we water it. If the tree needs more sunlight, we're going to make sure we try to clear the brush. Imagine if we did that. Imagine if every single one of us in this room were able to say, I am fighting for the highest possible good of the people around me. I truly love every single one of the people in this room. And whenever I go to challenge you, we're not having interpersonal conflict. It's not that I'm attacking you as a person. It's that I want to see you grow. I want to see you learn. I want to see you increase your influence to lead others towards Christ. And it's not interpersonal conflict. It's not attacking each other. It's ideological. It's trusting each other and saying, I'm going to work through this issue. I'm going to work through this problem in love. I'm going to love the people I lead, and I'm going to lead them with love. Imagine if we could do that. Imagine the impact we could have in this congregation. Imagine the impact we could have on this community if they said, yeah, that tab, they're committed. They're not just committed, they practice it daily, weekly. They're checking in with each other. They're getting into life groups, and they're asking each other these hard questions. They're entering to these uncomfortable conflicts, which are uncomfortable. No one wants to confront people, and they're doing it with love. And I know that for me, I understand someone's approaching me differently if I know they're coming to talk to me and they truly love me. If they're just coming to attack me because they've got challenging me because they've got nothing better to do and they don't actually care about me, what they say has much less value in my life. But if I know these people care about me, if I know these people love me, if I know these people want to see me grow and see me become the best that I can be as I pursue Christ, that matters to me. I'm much more receptive because I know that they really want to see me grow. And I think that we all understand that. I think we all relate to that. So the takeaway today is character fills the gap and impacts others. And I believe that we can understand that, we can reflect on that, and we can learn about that by just thinking through these three things. What are we pursuing? What are we practicing? And who are we impacting? Let's pray. God, we just thank you so much for everything you do for us. We ask that you would just give us humility. Give me humility, Lord. Help me to walk a life in line with what you've called us to do. Help me to live a life of purity, of love, and of faith. Lord, help me to reflect on what I'm saying and what I'm doing as it impacts this congregation, Lord. Help this community of believers to be able to see your light, to see that a foundation of character is where we need to start. Lord, I thank you for everything you've done. I thank you for this community. I thank you for the opportunity to preach. I thank you for your word, Lord. I ask that you would go with us today. Help us to be strong. Help us to be confident, Lord, but help us to remember these things. Help us to focus on them and recall them when it matters. Help us to make the intentional decision to start pursuing you in every step we can, in every way that we can. Help us to practice these things, reinforce them into our lives. Lord, I just thank you for everything you've done for us. I thank you for the weather. I thank you for this community. I thank you for the hard things we experience. I thank you for the conflict. I thank you for the willingness of this community to pursue you and to be here and to make the impact. We ask all of these things in your name. Amen. Thank you so much, Tab. I'll see you next week, all right? You're dismissed. Have a good day.